Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to make a really fun slimline scene card. So let's get started with this stamp set here. We're going to use the car and the little critters as well, and this is the car critters set. So I'm going to start off with this little car, and I'm going to stamp 5 of these. And I'm using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock and the VersaFine Onyx Black ink pad, which is a permanent black ink. Then I'll grab those little critters as well. I'm just going to take the ones that are sitting behind the steering wheel. And I'm going to stamp 5 of these for our 5 little cars. Well, I did stamp 6, but all I needed was the 5 of them. So I've got my blender pen and number 845 and 847 from my Tombow dual brush pens. And these are a water-based marker, so I'm just going to start with that lighter red color. And then I'll come in with a little bit of that darker right around the edges. Then I'm using the blender pen to do my blending, and I just scribbled it off on the scrap paper just to make sure it's clean before I go to my image. And I'm just going to again apply that lighter color and then a little bit of that darker color for shadowing. And this blender pen works really easy. You could use a water brush here, and it would be a little bit more of a softer look, but I like using the blender pens. I just find them easier to control things. And it has a nice detail tip on it as well. So I'll color all of these the same way. I will show you the colors that I used. I kind of went with a rainbow theme here. So I'm using red, green, orange, blue, and yellow to do my cars. And I'm just leaving it the lightest right down the center of the car there. And here you can see that I got a little red in that headlight. So I'm just grabbing some of the color and scribbling it on my scrap paper. And you just keep doing that until you get rid of that color. So it's pretty forgiving as well. If you get color where you didn't want it, again, you can just kind of scribble it off onto your scrap paper. You could also use an eraser here as well, but I decided just to use my blender pen to remove any excess ink. So I'm cleaning it off, and now I'm going to use N75 and N45, 2 shades of gray, to do the bumper and the license plate on these little cars. And I'll do all of these the exact same way, the same 2 colors. So again, just adding that little shadow to the 2 sides and then pulling in towards the center. And I'm doing the same thing on the license plate. And then I'll grab the black, which is N15, to do the tires. And then I'll take 491, which is kind of a blue-gray, very light color, just add a little reflection to those headlights. And I'll blend that out just a little bit. Now I did want to show you the other colors I used very quickly here. For the green car, I used 173 and 245. For the yellow, 946 and 991. The orange, 925 and 905. And for the blue, 452 and 493. So I went ahead and colored in the rest of those off camera. And for the little critters, I'm using a pink color, which is 723, and then a variety of browns, which I will list down below. So I'll list all the colors I used today down below. But I did want to show you the colors I used for the cars. And for each of these little critters, I did the same thing. I just used a little pink on the cheeks, and then one of those brown colors, and just kind of pulled that color in towards the center. And for the steering wheel, on this one I used gray, and I think I used some yellow on one of the steering wheels and maybe some black. So just kind of mix those up. I've got the coordinating dies. I'm going to tape those down with a little bit of purple tape, and then I'll run those through my Sizzix Sidekick machine. Now once those were all die cut, I took some Nuvo Crystal Glaze and I'm adding a little bit of glaze to all of those lights. And that's going to give it a nice glossy finish. It will look like glass. So I did that for all of these. Now for my little fans in the stands here, I've got these little people, and these are the tiny friends, and they also have coordinating dies as well. So I didn't want to bore you with all that coloring, but I colored them off camera, and you don't need to color the bottom half of them because they will be kind of behind the stands when we finish the card. So with the Elphie Selfie stamp set, I'm going to grab that little flag, and that has a coordinating die as well, so I'll stamp 2 of these. Now I'm using a permanent fine liner pen just to create the checkerboard on my flag so it looks like a flag at a racetrack. And I'm just drawing some little lines on it, and then I'm going to color in every other square in the black. And I did that for both of these. Then again, I've got the coordinating die. I'll tape that down and run it through my Sizzix Sidekick machine. So once those are die cut, I'm just going to set those aside. I'll grab 2 pieces of cardstock, one in a light gray, which is a 65 pound, and then the other one is the 100 pound white cardstock. And these both measure 3.5 by 8.5. So with this gray cardstock, I'm going to mark this at 4.25. So this measures 8.5, and we're going to mark it at the center point, which is 4.25. And then what I want to do is cut from that 4.25 mark to the opposite corner. So we're just going to cut that little triangle away. So again, from that center point out to the corner. So once that's all set, I'm going to turn it and go from that 4.25 to the opposite corner. So that's going to give us one big triangle, which is going to create the road for our little race scene. And you can see that's going to sit on the card just like that. Now to create a little shadow for this road, I'm using the Black Soot Distress Oxide ink and my little sponge dauber. So I'm going to apply a little shadow all the way around this triangle. But I do want to keep it darkest in that back point, back at the top there. I want to create the darkest shadow right there at the top. That's going to be the point that's the furthest away. So when you're looking at the card, that'll be the furthest away point of the road. So again, I'm just going to add that shadow all the way around here. And then I'll pick up the cardstock and just add a little bit of color right around all of the edges. So now you can see that's starting to give the effect of the road kind of going backwards. So now I'm grabbing my pencil, I've placed this on my card, and I'm going to draw a pencil line there. Now from the corner, the right hand corner of my card, I want to go up 1.25 inches from the corner up, and I'm going to mark that with my pencil. I'm just using my glass media mat because it has all the markings on it just to measure that out. Now with my ruler, I'm going to go from that 4.25 inch point at the center to that 1.25 inch point that we just marked. And you can see that there. So now to create the grassy area, I'm using Twisted Citron and Rustic Wilderness. And that grassy area is going to be right in there, right where the road is. But I did decide I needed to block off the sky portion. So at that top line, I'm going to put some purple tape down just to protect that sky area. So I've placed it right on that line on both sides. And now I can come back in with the Twisted Citron. I'm going to add a coating of this all the way up here to this point. And then I'll use the Rustic Wilderness just to add a little shadow where the road is going to meet the grass. And I do want it, again, the darkest in the back there at the top of the card, in that point, at the point. So I'm going to add a little bit of a darker shadow there. And then you can check that and make sure you have enough shadow. And if you don't think so, you can come back in with a little bit more color and then blend that out again. And I did the same thing for the other side. Now I can just wipe down that purple tape. I don't want to transfer any of that color over to my sky, so I'm just going to wipe that down. And now I can heat set that quickly because I do want to put the purple tape right over where that green is, and it won't stick if it's too wet there, so it's a good idea to dry that. I'm removing any pencil lines there with my Statler eraser. And then I'll go ahead and place that purple tape right back down on the line just below that line with a little tiny bit of that green showing, just a hair of it showing. And then I'm going to cut away that excess purple tape just so I keep that nice point right at the top of the card here. So now let's go ahead and do the sky. We're going to use the Salty Ocean, and I'm using this cloudy stencil from Fawn. We're going to go ahead and just stencil on these clouds. I'm using the sponge dauber here, and what I like to do is just kind of place the color on my stencil first and just get rid of some of the excess and then push that color up onto my cardstock. So I'm going to go ahead and do this all the way down here, right up to that purple tape. So once that's all set, I can go ahead and I'll just clean off that purple tape again. I am going to keep this tape for another project, so I just set it aside and leave it stuck down to my craft mat. And you can also clean it off with a baby wipe too if you want to keep it for another project. So now we've got this scene is starting to come together a little bit more. So let's set that aside. I've got some cardstock here. This is the paper bag cardstock from Fawn. And I'm just going to cut a piece that's 1/2 inch by 5 inches. And then what I want to do is cut that corner to corner. So we're just going to create 2 little triangles here. I have those all set. I'm going to just add a little bit of color down at the bottom of these. And I'm using the Ground Espresso Distress Oxide. And these will just be the little stands for the fans at the race. So you'll see what I mean here in a second. So I'm going to add that color and I'll make it the darkest at the thinnest point here, right at the tip. That'll be the furthest point away from us when we're looking at our scene. I'm going to do that for both of those pieces. Now I've got some paper here. I've just got some scrap paper. I'm going to cut a strip of the white cardstock about 1/8 of an inch. And then I'll cut 2 strips of the red cardstock. And that's going to create the finish line for our race. So again, I'm cutting these at about 1/8 of an inch. Now I can go ahead and glue those down at the bottom of this triangle at the widest point here. And I'm using my Fawn glue tube to glue these down. So I'll just add this last piece of red. And I'm just going to butt these three up right against each other here. And then I'll go ahead and cut away any excess. So now that that's done, I'm going to glue this right to the front panel of my card. I'll take that dauber again with the black soot on it and just finish off that edge a little bit. Now I've got these pieces of the paper bag cardstock, and I'm going to figure out where my little people are going to be behind there. So I'm just going to tuck 3 on each side, and I want to stamp the word yay behind them, and then we're also going to be using that other sentiment. And these are from the Your Clawsome stamp set. And that other sentiment will say, you're a winner. And we'll do that here in a minute. So I'm just trying to figure out about where these little people are going to be. And then I can go ahead and stamp yay. And I'm going to stamp that 3 times on each side. So now I can go ahead and glue all of these little people in place here. And then I can go ahead and glue down this paper bag cardstock as well. You want to make sure you put plenty of glue on that, especially down at the point there, just to make sure that it's fully attached there. So now I've got some black cardstock. This is a 100-pound black licorice cardstock. I'm putting some anti-static powder on there, and I'm inking it up with my Hero Arts Unicorn Pigment ink pad, and I'm just going to stamp that. For embossing powder, I'm using the Ranger Super Fine Detail White Embossing Powder. I'll sprinkle that on and then just tap away any excess. And then I'll heat set that with my heat tool. I'm going to create a little banner out of this, so I'm going to use that smallest banner from the Everyday Sentiment Banners dies. And I'm placing the sentiment over to the right hand side of this banner. We're going to be cutting away that excess on the left here in a second. So I'm running that through the Sizzix Sidekick machine. Then I'll just grab my scissors and cut away that excess. I'm going to pop this up on the card, so I'll use some Scotch foam mounting tape. And I'm attaching that to the upper left-hand corner here. Just want to make sure it's nice and straight. Now I've got all my little cars, and I'm going to attach all my little critters inside here. So once those are all done, I'm going to go ahead and figure out where I want these on the card. And I want that blue card to win the race, so I'm placing that over the finish line. And then I'll kind of stagger these others kind of coming in here. And then I can go ahead and glue these down. So now I've got all those glued in place. And I've got this last little girl here. She has her hand up, so I thought she would be perfect for holding this little flag. Just attaching that flag to her hand, and then I'll just glue her down. And then I debated over this second flag. I couldn't decide, but I did in the end decide to put that over there because I wanted to add a little of that black and white to the right hand side of the card. But you could certainly skip this one if you prefer. Now I'm using my Uniball Signo white gel pen, and I'm going to add some highlights to all these little cars. So let's go ahead and create the card for this. And I'm going to cut a piece of cardstock at 8.5 inches by 7 inches. And on the 7-inch side, I'm going to score this at 3.5 inches. And this will create a standard slimline card, which will measure 3.5 by 8.5, which is the same size as the panels that we created today. So I'm going to go ahead and just press that out with my bone folder. And then we can go ahead and attach this panel. I'm using my ATG 700 to attach this, and this is a nice super strong permanent adhesive. So once that's all set, I'm also going to grab this stamp here that says "You're Great," and I'm going to stamp that on the license plate of the winning car. And again, that's from the Car Critters stamp set. So once that's all set, let me give you a closer look at today's card. And I just think this is fun. This little race is fun, and I think we have a lot of texture and dimension here as well. So I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to visit me at pinkwhisperdesigns.com. As always, thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.